Thank you, Decoding Dyslexia Georgia, and Tina Ingberg, State Leader of Decoding Dyslexia Georgia, for inviting me to be part of Dyslexia Day at the Capitol. I am always happy to speak about an important education topic dear to me, the school to prison pipeline. More importantly, I want to help parties interested in eradicating the school to prison pipeline to understand the intricate connection between early literacy and feelings of self worth, and between illiteracy and juvenile delinquency. To do this, let me begin with the true story that will set the direction for my remarks and highlight reading instruction's potential if we focus on identifying and supporting children early who struggle with reading. You see, one day at the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center, I was frightened by a frantic adult male inmate. I was walking from the minimum security side to the maximum security side of the correctional facility, and out of nowhere, he confronted me after eyeing me in the medical service area. His facial expression was scary. He was a large guy. His voice was deep, and his tone was very demanding. He wanted immediate assistance with enrolling in GED classes. Now, as the principal and GED examiner of the Philadelphia Prison System School, I thought he might be having a problem with the enrollment process and just needed my help with the referral. So I began to explain to him the enrollment steps. But in the middle of my explanation, he just cut me off and yelled, "No, Mr. Principal, I'm not having that type of trouble. I'm still in the damn hooked on phonics class, and I want to get my GED." While I could understand and obviously feel this inmate's frustration, I had to think hard about what to say. I did not want to say the wrong thing to him and have all hell break loose in the jail. The reality is that I could provide nothing but the truth. I knew he could not go from learning phonics to a GED in a short time. His frustration was neither with me nor with the Hooked on Phonics class. What frustrated him was that he was carrying the burden of a lifetime of illiteracy. I'm going to come back to that story in a few minutes. But first, let me formally say hello again and introduce myself. I am Hilderbrand Pelzer III, an educator who has spent the past 3 decades in urban education, serving as a physical education teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, and an assistant regional superintendent. My career has intersected between education and incarceration, and the lessons I've learned have enabled me to engage in issues related to inadequate reading instruction, educational inequity, and illiteracy in the juvenile justice system. I'm also the author of Unlocking Potential, Organizing a School Inside a Prison. I originally wrote Unlocking Potential to share strategies with superintendents of schools and correctional educators who were responsible for educating the prison youth and wanted to improve their schools for incarcerated youth, starting by addressing false assumptions about access to high-quality education for youth in correctional settings. I soon realized the book had a much greater purpose: to rethink our theories about the school-to-prison pipeline by shifting the focus away from discipline policies as the reason children are going to jail to reading instruction as the reason children are going to jail. My enthusiasm for student achievement stems from a career-long commitment that began when I was a first-year teacher at a correctional facility in Pennsylvania, serving incarcerated juvenile males. At that facility, I made one of the biggest decisions of my life: to become a principal. My experience here gave me valuable insight into incarcerated youth's education and their prior inadequate reading and school experiences. Some students could not even spell their first or last names. They were mostly black boys, and they were alarmingly illiterate. My students found the most extraordinary ways of showing me their struggles. I did not learn about their reading problems by being their reading teacher. I was their physical education teacher. In this role, my students showed me their boldness, their toughness, and their athleticism. But on days that I helped the assistant principal with supervision of the school, I saw my students in a different environment. Classrooms. Their performance was the opposite of what I knew them to be capable of. In the physical education setting, they were strong-minded, talented, and confident. Through athletics, I coached them and developed relationships with them. I was able to engage them in learning. In the classrooms where they had to learn reading, math, science, social studies, and other subjects, they floundered. They were shy. Their teachers had a tougher time leveraging the same connections that I had with them. The root cause of this contrast was the students' inability to read. Now, this fueled my passion to become a principal. I wanted to support disadvantaged students and strive to understand why so many of them could not read. According to studies on crime and delinquency, children who cannot read by the end of third grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school, which increases the likelihood they will enter the prison pipeline. Consequently, 70% of inmates read at or below a 4th grade level. Now, my initial story about the inmate I encountered at the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center highlights the persistent problem of children who grow up never learning how to read. This adult inmate's plight represents what it could look like for children if we don't get reading instruction right. His emotional exchange with me revealed how reading instruction had gone so wrong for him. And it amplified how it goes wrong for many children every day. At the age of 55, this inmate was a beginner reader. He was enrolled in a phonics program, which indicated that he had never been taught the relationships between letters and sounds. He did not master the alphabet. He could not decode or recognize words. His enrollment in a phonics program also indicated that he was just learning letter patterns and how to combine syllables with more complex sounds and syllable patterns, as well as how to manipulate syllables and sounds in words. Even more alarming is that his school principals and teachers likely missed the early warning signs that he was a struggling reader, or perhaps a child who suffered from dyslexia. They either did not identify him as needing reading support and intervention, misunderstood the early warning signs, or just plain ignored them. They would have known whether he needed intensive intervention or not. Perhaps they did not know how to help him. Either way, no one did. At 55 years old, this African American adult male inmate still could not read. Of course, he went through school reading well below grade level. He never developed the skills to read at his grade level, and he probably was passed on from grade to grade to grade without making progress in reading. He eventually grew from childhood to adulthood, from a boy to a grown man, but now he was an inmate still trying to learn how to read. His frustration with his own illiteracy fueled his courage to ask me for help on that day. He wanted to complete his education. He wanted an opportunity to attend classes to earn a GED. He wanted to know how to do it. He wanted to learn how to read. He did not give up. My experience with this inmate is cemented in my brain. To me, it represents why it is so important to identify children with reading difficulties in their early years of learning. Decoding Dyslexia Georgia and all the dyslexia advocacy groups and organizations around the world should be commended for their advocating for children and adults with reading difficulties in their early years of learning. Getting access to high-quality structured reading instruction to children and adults who struggle to read, write, and spell, and who do not have the means to access high-quality reading instruction must be our #1 priority. Taking these steps to achieve this priority will ultimately help struggling readers, foster their enjoyment of reading, and ultimately improve their reading proficiency. Thank you.